I thank the China Association of Higher Education, UNESCO Chair of Education for Asia Pacific region, Zhengzhou University, and Henan Provincial People's Government for organizing this important event and inviting me to give this talk. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we've been forced out of our comfort zones, made to embrace a new normal that we didn't know was possible before. Not in our wildest dreams, never. The disruption caused by this COVID-19 to the global education system is extraordinary and unprecedented in human history, affecting nearly 1.6 billion people and learners in more than 190 countries. It has manifestly exposed the crisis in global education systems. No institution was prepared for this, and either as a risk management issue or its implications should it eventuate. It has impacted 94% of the world's student populations. And to exacerbate the matters, this situation has also affected the supply of teaching and educational personnel. Sadly, this is unprecedented, and sudden pandemic has come at a time when the 2030 Agenda, otherwise known as the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, were getting good traction, and a significant number of countries were making good progress in their implementation. The current situation, however, presents an unprecedented opportunity for the global educational systems to do things differently. A drastic and transformative process is required by policymakers, authorities, students, and educationalists if we are to mitigate future risks. Now, in this paper, I will argue that this unprecedented situation presents the educational institutions with an opportunity to do things better in a way that will benefit all humanity. The lessons we are learning during these times will hopefully help us recover better and put us on a path towards accelerated sustainable development. So I'll now show you a short United Nations produced video on the Sustainable Development Goals.
In the year 2000, leaders from 189 countries agreed on a vision for the new millennium. They wanted to end extreme poverty in all of its forms. So they made a list of 8 goals, called the Millennium Development Goals, and they wanted to achieve these goals in 15 years. One of the leading organizations working to fulfill these goals has been the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. We're present in more than 170 countries and territories. We championed the goals so that people everywhere would know what they were and how people could do their part. We funded projects that helped fulfill the goals. We helped countries accelerate SDG progress by breaking down the silos and working across sectors. We acted as scorekeeper, helping countries to track progress. As a result, the number of people that live on less than $1.25 per day has dropped by more than half. The number of primary school-age kids who don't go to school, down by almost half. The number of people getting life-saving treatment for HIV increased by over 15 times. Child mortality, down by almost half. As much progress as we have made together, there's still a lot more to do. Over 800 million people are still living on less than $1.25 a day. 1 in 9 people on our planet goes to sleep hungry each night. Deforestation remains alarmingly high in many countries. Oceans are becoming more acidic, threatening food security and marine ecosystems. And about 1 of every 6 adults in the world is illiterate. 2/3 of them are women. We think those are tough numbers, and so do leaders from the countries where we work. So in September 2015, they agreed on a new set of goals to help finish the work we all started in 2000. The new goals are called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. We have made significant progress in the last 15 years, and we think there's plenty of room for hope, for action, in the next 15 years. Today, the world is more connected by technology. We know more about how to balance the three pillars of sustainable development: social progress, economic growth, and environmental protection. However, our climate is changing. Our planet is transforming, and there are more people on Earth than ever before. We at UNDP believe everyone can have enough of what they need living within our planetary boundaries, and we are working around the world to make this happen. Our goals to reach by 2030 are to eradicate extreme poverty, protect our environment, and much more. UNDP has 50 years of experience working with countries to make this a more prosperous, healthy, inclusive, and sustainable world. Join us.
So the 2030 Development Agenda is comprised of 17 aspirational goals, with SDG 4 specifically dedicated to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The goals are a global commitment by the international community to wipe out poverty by 2030. Now, all the goals are framed by 5 key overarching objectives. The first objective is people, to end poverty and hunger. The second objective is the planet, to protect it from degradation. The third objective is prosperity, and to ensure that all human beings can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives. The fourth objective, peace, is to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. And lastly, in my opinion, one of the most important ones is partnerships, by mobilizing the means required to implement this agenda through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development. The SDG 4 on quality education is articulated as a stand-alone goal and is linked to almost all of the other SDGs in one way or another. So you will see from this slide that education is vital for reducing poverty, leading to better health, reducing inequality and injustice, and concomitantly decrease in the risk of war and increase in the political participation. So while this pandemic is severely undermining prospects for achieving the aims under this Goal 4, critically, it is having direct and far-reaching effects on all other SDGs. The education system's response to this pandemic cannot be delinked from the actions on all other SDGs. All member states, the entire UN system, experts, and the cross-section of civil society, businesses, and, most importantly, millions of people from all corners of the globe have committed themselves to this comprehensive agenda, seeking to address globally shared concerns and to promote public good. So we need to develop links between good governance and sustainable development. The new and enhanced post-COVID governance structure in the higher education sector should have the qualities of rapid responsiveness and accountability, transparency, encompass engagement to all of its stakeholders, including faculty, students, and administrative staff, and have the capacity to interact with their respective government education departments to design and implement policies that affect the education sector. Enhanced governance structures would then necessarily include what the UN World Summit in Johannesburg in 2002 emphasized was the development of a system that includes the need for good quality education, an essential tool for achieving a more sustainable world. It would then promote values, understanding, appropriate knowledge, and the skill sets required in the new post-COVID world. In turn, this would spur economic growth, help eradicate poverty and hunger. So you may ask, is it possible to future-proof catastrophic events? There is no single silver bullet answer to this. However, I will argue that incorporating the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals at a granular level in the governance and policy making structures of higher education is another string in its bow to reduce the enormous and damaging impact events like the pandemic is having globally. Unprecedented and catastrophic times calls for a clear and transparent leadership, appropriate skill sets, and capacities to tackle any future emergencies. So, what is the role of higher education institutions in achieving the SDGs? As mentioned before, the education sector is one of the few sectors that can support, promote, and contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs cover a wide range of complex social, economic, and environmental challenges, and addressing them will require changes in the way societies, economies function and interact with our planet. Universities are critical to achieving the SDGs because they can equip the next generation of students with the skill sets, knowledge base, and understanding to address sustainability challenges, opportunities, and, moreover, undertake research that advances the Sustainable Development Agenda. Arguably, none of the SDGs will be achieved without the active participation of the education sector. In addition, they can use their expertise, research capabilities, and leadership to influence all its stakeholders, including learners, teachers, administrators, and government education departments to adopt and model more sustainable practices. This would include, amongst other things, the use of latest technology like artificial intelligence for aiding the educational faculty and students to get the most out of the educational experience. So, to be effective, however, universities must fully be committed to supporting and implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The SDGs are an important vehicle for creating positive impact by embedding sustainability into the university business strategies, decision-making processes, and practices, and for improving their accountability to stakeholders. The universities will benefit greatly by engaging with SDGs. They will be able to demonstrate the impact by capturing demand for sustainable development-related education, build new global partnerships, and attracting new avenues of funding, which will lead to the universities being viewed as a responsible and a global player. So the next obvious question is, how do we integrate SDGs in the governance structure? Translating sustainable development goals and policies into an integrated operational system is an important and major undertaking that will have university-wide effect. It will involve changing the university leadership culture, attitudes, and clearly defining responsibilities and accountability, and establishing organizational structures, information reporting systems, and the operational practices. The following are some of the steps in incorporating the SDGs within the governance structures. So the first one is identifying the issues relevant to your institution. It is important that universities identify exactly which one of the goals are directly related to their core business, services, and practices, and the type of impact they could have on its business model. The second one is identifying the value creation. Universities should determine whether or not the relevant issues identified will be a risk or an opportunity for them. This will also help in identifying the level of impact that these issues could have on its overall operations and on its various stakeholders. Thirdly, build a strategic business model incorporating the SDGs. The strategy should set out the specific objectives and methods that will support the relevant SDGs and include short, medium, and long-term targets that must be achieved. In addition, the strategy should identify how to manage specific sustainable development risks and how to maximize their opportunities. Fourthly, think global partnerships. The SDGs are a call for international cooperation for partnerships and solidarity. Taking into account any regional differences, collaboration and exchange of best practices with other institutions of higher learning is of vital importance in any future strategies and policies developed. And lastly, it is important to communicate and translate the UN speak into everyday language. Detail the sustainable development issues the universities have been contributing towards and the positive impact that these have had on the institution and its stakeholders, including the value these contributions have created in the short, medium, and long terms. This pandemic has highlighted the need to create and implement a new and better way to conduct the business of education. Real change takes place in deep crises like the one the world is facing right now. And as the Vice Chancellor of the Australian National University, Professor Brian Schmidt, says, we don't expect to return back to the business as usual pre-COVID. And I agree with him. The full realization of SDG objectives for higher education strongly depends on a common understanding of basic principles of effective governance for sustainable development. To that end, capacities are required at institutional as well as individual levels to withstand any future emergencies, and by developing and implementing appropriate contingency plans that would mitigate their impact. So I would like to thank you and the organizers for inviting me to this talk, and I wish you all a safe journey and safe stay wherever you are. Thank you.